Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Tom Stewart here, Cleaning Business Today, Smart Business Moves. We have a treat for you, an awesome treat for you today. You're not going to believe this by the time we're sitting here an hour from now, the things you will have heard. Perry Tait. Hey, Perry, how are you today?
I'm great, thank you. It's early morning, but I'm great.
Perry is coming to us from China. I'm pretty decent with geography as it pertains to like the United States and places I'm familiar with. I can spell China. That's about it. But Perry's going to tell us a lot more about where he's currently living, what he does. He manufactures equipment for the cleaning industry. He's been involved with franchising and residential. He's I believe you're from Australia, right?
Yeah. New Zealand passport, but 30-something years in Australia, yeah.
And we're going to learn a lot about COVID from an international perspective and what it means to us as cleaning professionals and managing cleaning businesses. And this is going to be awesome. Liz, how are you today?
I am well. Thank you, Tom. I feel like nowadays you don't say hi to me until like 10 minutes into the show now.
I'm sorry. It's been a minute. It's been a minute and 10 seconds. Okay.
You know what, he's too excited that you're on the show. That's what
I'm
right.
off my game a little bit today.
Yes.
This has got me a little shaken.
I have a question for you, Perry. So do you speak Chinese with an Australian accent, or do you speak Australian with a Chinese accent?
Neither. I'm very, very poor at Chinese. What I worked out, because there's so many, every city has its own language here. So when I first came here, I was learning and I went to, courses and everything like that. And then when I got here, it's like everybody's got their own language. Like the city that I live in has a language, the Shanghai has its own language. And so if you really want to get local, right, then you've got to learn all these different languages. I'm not going to do that. So it just became easier to hire people who speak language. I mean, obviously I can talk to a taxi driver and I can say hello to somebody and I can walk into a shop and say I want, but that's about it, Yeah.
All right. I was hoping we were going to hear some crazy accent stuff going on.
I can freak you out if you want.
I don't know. We might say that to the end of the show, Perry.
Yeah, that's right.
I got my pad. I'm ready to take awesome notes, Tom.
Okay, let's go. Let's do this.
Let's just jump right into this, and we'll take care of all of our obligatory housekeeping stuff at the end today, okay?
Okay.
Perry, if you would, just kind of take it from the top and share a lot about you, actually, in terms of your experience in the industry and the whole history as to how it started to where we are today.
Okay, so I think I started in cleaning industry. I actually was a franchise sales manager. So I've sold 250 plus franchises in the cleaning industry and the lawn mowing industry. I was working with a company called VIP Home Services in Australia. So I was like the national sales manager, and then I got custody of 2 children. So I became I started working from home a little bit more as Mr. Mum and all that. So I went back to being estate manager. And so that was kind of like my introduction, over 3 years I was doing that. And then during that time, somebody came to me from the UK and was talking about window cleaning and said, hey, have you seen these poles? And so I got involved in water-fed window cleaning, and then I opened a little window cleaning business alongside selling the franchises, being Mr. Mum and, trying to pay all the bills and everything. And so I learned a lot. We imported some poles from Denmark, and then we bought bits and pieces, and then I was DIY and everything like that. And the whole time I'm learning. And I'm 6'6", and I was like 40 at the time or something. And so I was scared of heights, and I said, I'm not going to climb ladders. So I called it the Ladderless Window Cleaning Company, and we only did it with poles, and we never used ladders. And so at some point I got an opportunity to come to China. I was actually selling solar thermal systems for a company called Ecotherm in Austria, and I had a Chinese business partner like an ABC, but we say Australian-born Chinese or something like that. But anyway, he wasn't actually born in Australia, but he was an Australian citizen. And so I got this opportunity to come to China, and we ran around all over China trying to sell these solar systems, right, to 5-star hotels and hospitals. And China's big on solar, right? But anyway, we got this big sale. It was like $1 million. Phase 1 was 400,000. And I said, okay, now give me my commission, because I've been spending my own money. One of my kids had come with me when he was 17. So I'd left him in Shanghai, and I was up in, Qingdao or somewhere. Right. And anyway, this guy wouldn't give me my commission. So I said, okay, well, I'm just not, he wanted me to be his employee. And I said, I didn't come to be that, So then I went back home, and I brought back this design for this pole for water-fed that I thought, was the right design. And then I went and found a factory. I said to my son, we're not going home losers. I got no money, but we're just going to start a business. You've left school at 16. You're now in China at 18. So he'd got a job at the World Expo. So I said, let's just do a business to be together. It'll be like the Berenstain Bears. I'll either show you how it's done and we'll win, or I'll show you how it's not done and you'll learn, So that was 2011, April 2011. So now 10 years later, we're global, and we've got Reach It. thefutureofcleaning.com is the name of the business, and we make the fastest window cleaning equipment for external window cleaning. So we've got amazing. Maybe like we've got testimonies of people earning $450 an hour cleaning windows, scrubbing glass. I mean, it's like lawyers' money, for rubbing a brush up and down on glass. It's kind of crazy. So we're excited about that. And that was a long journey, by the way, to get to that kind of hourly rate, because we just kept looking at the technology, and I'm a bit mad scientist. So I kind of look at the technology and then look at the technique, and the technology and the technique. So we're a tool with a technique, not just a Me Too product or a copy product and all that. And then January this year came around, and I'm in Ningbo, China, which is about 600 miles from Wuhan, right? So we're directly east of Wuhan, and then COVID hit, and then I got seriously concerned watching the numbers. The early day numbers of Wuhan were crazy, just double like that as far as infections. And I looked at that, and a friend of mine came back he'd gone to a wedding. He's American, and he had some Danish friends, and he'd gone to Wuhan for a wedding, and then he came back on January the 21st, and then we went out for dinner on the 22nd, and we went out for dinner again on the 23rd, and then on the 24th of January, Wuhan locked down, right? And then the 25th, Ningbo is where our factory is. Shanghai is where my family is. So I'm in Shanghai right now, and it's dark outside. That is actually outside behind me. So my friend went into quarantine. The police rang him. This is like, we'll talk about contact tracking, right? But the police rang him and said, you've been in Wuhan, right? So we need to lock you up. And they, put cameras outside his door and everything. This is the early days, like when it was really, really rigid, more less disciplined, more rigid, more police involvement rather than community involvement. And so then I'm going, I said, I'm going to go to Thailand with my son and my wife and little boy. I've got a 10-year-old here as well, with a Chinese lady as my wife, right? So, I said, don't come with me yet, because I might be contagious, because I've been exposed to somebody from Wuhan. So we flew in the plane to Thailand, I was thinking the same as Trump was thinking, it's going to disappear. It's not going to go into the hot areas, the hot and humid, right? I'm going to get there. We'll watch from a distance, and we'll be kind of on it. And then I'm studying this thing like crazy, to see what's going on. I'm thinking about trying to get my family out to come with me. And somebody got online and said, what kind of husband would have, leave his family behind and stuff like this. And I was going, I'm going, dude, I might be contagious, right? So I'm not bringing them here until I'm past 14 days. And then it went like really locked down, like nobody could get out. But interestingly, even back then, I'm talking January 27th, I could go to an app in my phone and look up my flight and see if anybody on my flight had tested positive with COVID.
Oh, wow.
So that taught me that China's contact tracking was way more big brother already than having to develop itself for COVID.
So is that the way you read that? Like that technology had been in place for a long time, and it just happened to be okay. Now we got COVID. Another thing that we can do with it. Okay.
Yeah. Now we're using it.
Yeah, like you can see it, right? So I'll give you an example, right? So we're now, China's basically COVID free. There are a few outbreaks from frozen food coming in. This frozen food from 23 countries is banned at the moment. We've had outbreaks, what become community outbreaks.
I mean, we hear that in the States, and then there's a lot of speculation that it really can't spread that way. I mean, is that a real?
Oh, sure. Sure, it's real. Yeah. When you get a COVID free, and then you get outbreaks in food processing. The thing is, because let's talk about that. The virus is dead, right? Yeah. So you heard Trump's doctor say we're going to test him to see if he still has any live virus in him. That is a completely non-scientific. I think it is. Well, maybe it is live once it's in you. No, maybe it's right.
It's living inside the cell,
outside of you.
You've got viable RNA that you're shedding. It's still contagious.
Yeah. It's not a living thing, right? So it's not like it's not like bacteria. Bacteria can grow on a surface, right? Bacteria can spread outside in itself. It's an organism. The virus does not. If there's a virus on your computer, it's not going to grow. It's not going to do anything. It's not going to spread or multiply. It's just going to be there, right? So when somebody has a droplet, the thing about droplets is that droplets normally evaporate. They evaporate and become airborne, right? So that's why it ends up. A lot of it ends up. Some of it comes from your lungs, and we'll go into all that later, maybe. But if a droplet lands on a surface, it then whatever's in it stays in it. If you freeze that, it's not going to die. That's what they're talking like months or years later, it could still be there. So it's just not. It's not going to die. So that's what happens. So we've had outbreaks here from shrimp or prawns, depending on which way you come from. Shrimp and prawns from Brazil, salmon from Norway, beef from Germany. Like little outbreaks that China's had to manage. So I thought what might be interesting is for people to understand like how does China get COVID free? Because it's kind of like, oh yeah, they stopped it in their country, but actually the level of diligence and vigilance is it's just like unrelentless. Like at the moment, my little boy Ollie, he goes to school here in Shanghai. So he's not allowed to leave the city of Shanghai. It's a big city. It's 27 million people, right? So it's not a small city, but he's not allowed out of Shanghai. So yesterday they did a spot check on us, on both parents, to go to an app and show a screenshot with today's date with our names of a green code. So the green code means you can travel and you can go into shopping centers, and it's basically it's red if you've been exposed to, through a contact tracing thing. If somebody in your building, everybody in the building's code will go red. They can't move. They can't get on public transport. They can't get into shopping centers. They can't do anything. If you're red code, you're back into isolation. So then that's step one. I knew about that one. Then we had to go somewhere else inside this app and put up another report, which is a travel report, which has a list of all places that you've been to, right? And we had to submit those to show that we hadn't been out of Shanghai. Because if we've been out of Shanghai with a kid who's then going to go back into school, they would say he needs to isolate for 14 days, so that if there was an outbreak because we're in a national holiday period right now. There's 405 million people have moved from somewhere to somewhere else and are going to come back again. But Shanghai is trying to keep itself clean. This is the level of control and diligence and vigilance, and that's why China's COVID free.
So explain how the contact tracing works with your phone, the red and the green. So everybody has to have a phone and with an app on it, or is it?
Yep.
Everybody?
So
What
there's
if
two
you
apps. No, well, the thing about China, the other thing about China is that we're 100% digital currency. You'll never see anybody carry a card or cash. Everybody is digital currency. So the irony is you can't go, you wouldn't go to a pub, a restaurant, a corner store, a shopping center without having rentable battery packs. You know what I mean? Like phone battery packs. So you pay, 15 cents an hour or something, and you scan a QR code and a little battery pops out, and you can take it out of this machine here and walk an hour and put it into that machine here, and like that. So battery packs are your life because your money is in there, your health code is in there, so that phone is always live. I mean, it's just an advanced digital society. It's like insane.
So if you wanted to go somewhere and leave your phone at home, you wouldn't be able to do much without your phone, right?
No, if you can't show your green code, like during COVID, if you can't show your green code, you can't move. You can't catch a bus.
So
you can drive somewhere. Say that again.
So every person in the entire country has a code, a red or green code?
Yeah, every single person. Yeah.
Wow.
And so much more Big Brother data than what we would have thought of, because what happens if I go into a shopping center and somebody and there was an outbreak, my code will turn red. Like they don't need to ring me. The next time I go to move, I got a red code. And that's what, like when I came back into China from Thailand, my code was red. Like I was in quarantine anyway, and it turned green the day I came out of quarantine. My code turned green. Okay, free to travel. So
let's say, walk me through this, Perry, because I am just not techie at all. So let's say that you're at a shopping center and you pick it up because you're going to go to the local pub, okay? And you find out you're red, and you're like, uh-oh. Now you have to go home, right?
Yes. Now, the thing is that because China's lockdown was so effective, it's not happening very much. So it's not like there are little outbreaks everywhere, right? But when there is an outbreak, or if there was an outbreak, your code would turn red. And then the other thing that's interesting about China, because thinking that China is a 5,000-year-old civilization nation, right? We see the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, it's a 71-year-old organization since it took over from the National Party, right, during a civil war. So we kind of see that short history, but actually, if you actually look at China, it's been a commune-based community system for thousands of years, right? So everybody lives in a compound, and there's a security guard at the entrance to all compounds. So I live in a compound here with my wife. There's 9 buildings, 32 stories tall, 2 people in each building on each floor. So everybody has one neighbor. So maybe it'll be daylight at the end of this, and you'll see the building across the way. So you can't. There used to be 2 entrances, but all compounds now have 1 entrance, and the security guards are at the entrance to those compounds. And so during COVID, you couldn't go. 1 person every 3 days from each household was allowed out to go shopping. In Wuhan, it was 1 person per household per 5 days, in the total lockdown. And then they got the delivery guys like Uber Eats, right? They closed down the number of people out, and they got Uber Eats. So they turned Uber Eats into an essential service, and then they got the Uber Eats to deliver to the gate, and they would deliver to the gate. The people would come down inside the compound, pick up their food, and take it up to their room. And the exposure then was only in the elevators. Like in elevators, they're definitely a high risk transmission area, by the way. Yes, wear a mask in an elevator.
Right. So what happens? Let's say that you're red, and you can't leave. What happens if you do?
Yeah. You'll go to, if I did it, I'd be exported, right? Because I'm an immigrant, so, oh yeah, there's no, if they do it, they would go to if you broke the system, you'd go to jail, it'll be a medical jail because they don't know you're infectious or not, but
So
you can't, you just, the thing about, there's a cultural thing here too, because if you think about a 5,000-year-old culture and a 350-year-old culture, there's China is more about mankind and family, and America, Australia, New Zealand, like our countries, are more about our nation and our individual, right? So this individual, family, nation, mankind is your structure, right? So you have one old system, it's mankind and family, and you have another system which is nation and individual. So the Chinese culture is more compliant. I mean, it's 1.3 billion people that just don't want to get stirred up too much because it's 1.3 billion people. Right. You just got to try and keep that thing calm, So they just don't get stuck.
You just don't have the big rabble rousers like we have here in the States. You're not going to have people doing big, protests and
they won't get out. That's the irony. They won't get out of there. Like if they could, the government could red code them for being a rabble rouser, I guess, and just lock them down. It's an amazing level of, that's the thing, because I'm living here and I've come to appreciate the two different government systems, but I'm still an immigrant. Like I'm a 1 year at a time. I've been here for 10 years. I've got a wife and a kid here. I've got a company here. I employ 30 people here, but I'm still a 1 year at a time, guest of the country. But I see them as, I'm able to observe it. I've been here so long that I can see what works. I can see why it works, and I've seen so much more from COVID, watching this great big machine, run people who are happy. They're not suppressed. There's no suppression. There's no, there's no. I mean, it's a communist system, so the idea of slave labor just doesn't make sense anyway. As far as people being underpaid, because it just doesn't make sense in a system that's communist, right? Because communism is basically for the people, so the government's there to make business pay. Like during COVID, we had lockdown for, maybe I had to pay people 8 weeks. It was illegal to terminate a person. Illegal for somebody to lose their job during COVID. So I terminated one troublemaker that I had in my company, and 7 days later, I'm in arbitration. I'm in court with that guy. So then when COVID is over, nobody had lost their job. So the government didn't subsidize us. They let us pay our taxes later. They gave us a 30-day respite on taxes or 60-day respite on taxes, like, social insurances, house insurance. Like each company has to pay a lot of support to each individual, but we weren't allowed to terminate. So when it's all over and they said, okay, everybody back to work, everybody still had the job, turned the companies back on, economy turned on again. Did
any companies go out of business because of that?
Not many. The Chinese, so that's a difference again between us, because we're so able to make money that we don't really think about saving money. But if you look at your first generation Americans, like immigrants, how they save money, and the first generation Australians, like they save money, they say to their kids, bad times might come. I've come from bad times. Don't just think it's all, good, right? So the Chinese have got a philosophy to save. So they've, even we didn't pay we were allowed to delay our payroll for a month. I mean, we didn't get one squeak out of our staff when we said, hey, we don't want to pay our payroll for a month just while we see what's happening. And they just said, okay. They all had savings, right? And they're all homes, so they're all just eating,
So obviously, right. You're talking to a bunch of people here who own and run house cleaning businesses, and we've seen a lot of change, a lot of challenges here in this unprecedented time of this novel virus, and the stories changed. What we thought how it spread and what the risks were. It's kind of evolving. You've seen it from another angle, and you've got different data than we do, in some regards maybe better data than we do. What what should we be doing as house cleaning companies to be responsible cleaning in a COVID-19 world? And I guess as a follow-up to that, and maybe the more interesting part is, we're looking for business opportunities here. Are there opportunities for us?
There are opportunities, for sure. So to put it in perspective, the Bob Woodward tapes show that China said it was airborne before February the 7th, right, to President Trump. And so if you get that as a let's say it's a fact because it's on tape, albeit the whole world's going to change about what's real and what's not real, and as we go forward, but on that basis, like it helps understand that I knew it was airborne back then, because the Chinese CDC was telling everybody it's airborne, right? It wasn't a withheld piece of data, or the game was played differently, right? It was played absolutely in your face. This is a contagious disease. It's from airborne. You've got to do this. You got to do that, like that. So
just to be clear, you knew, and everybody around you knew. So it'd be hard to imagine that people in other parts of the world had access to that. It wasn't a secret. I mean,
it was no secret.
The average American might
that's
not know, but
if you talk about that, the West didn't play the game that way, because so let's talk about transmission. There are three ways for transmission. There's airborne transmission, which is aerosolized droplet nuclei, scientific terms, right? But there's airborne transmission, and that means it stays and floats in the air. Then there's droplet transmission. Well, there's other ones. There's oral transmission, like mononucleosis, right? You need to get a super dose. So that's why they call it the kissing disease, but it's a droplet close contact transmission, right? Then there's close contact like HIV, which is sexually transmitted. There's oral, where people don't wash their hands after going to the toilet, and they get basically a feces to oral transmission, right? That's where you get your diarrhea from having eaten it at a restaurant where somebody didn't wash their hands. That's kind of weird to talk about, but these are the transmissions which I'm turning into a germaphobe, right, as I read all the stuff. So the thing is that there's droplet transmission, and then the droplet lands on a surface, and then the droplet dries out, it evaporates, and that leaves whatever it is that came out of the person's mouth on the surface, and then that becomes what they call fomite. So fomite means surface. So if somebody touches the surface and then touches their entry points, eyes, nose, and mouth, and then they self-inoculate. So they basically put it inside themselves. So then you look at the preventions. So social distancing is about droplet transmission. So if somebody coughs or sneezes, or sneeze goes further than 6 feet, but a cough will go 6 feet. This is something that is kind of from your mouth, right? And maybe in a cough, it comes from your upper respiratory. So the size of the droplet that comes out of you is bigger, right? So gravity grabs it. So by the time it gets 6 feet, it's dropped 3 feet, or it might have dropped 6 feet, you know what I mean? So it's no longer within reach of somebody else's mouth. So that's your social distancing, whether it's 3 feet, 4.5 feet, 6 feet, 8 feet. That's different people's determinations as to how far a droplet could get if somebody coughs or sneezes. A mask is to hold and stop that transmission of a droplet. Yeah. So if somebody coughs or sneezes, they're wearing a mask, or they exhale, you slow down that projection so that the liquid that's coming out of us. Like if I go to a cold window, you can see it's starting to get light outside. But if you breathe on a cold window, you have a look at how much water is coming out of us in every single breath. Mm-hmm. Or you wear a mask and you see your glasses fog up. That is an aerosol. That is where the virus is. So now I've read one of the COVID positive tests, and they talk about coughing, sneezing, and exhale. Exhale is the giveaway. exhale comes from your lungs. That you don't get droplets from your lungs. You get droplet nuclei. You get an aerosol, right? And then somebody who's infected has got mucus and saliva and all sorts of things, which affects how that happens when that gets out into the air. Now, when the humidity is high and the temperatures are high, you get an evaporation. So the droplet comes out of you and then it evaporates. So within 1 second, 80% of the volume of a droplet is reduced down. And now instead of landing on a surface, it now, through this thing called Brownian motion, which is like if you see a ray of sun and you see the twinkling of dust, in the air, and you go, well, why isn't that dust on the ground? Like, I didn't move. I didn't stamp the ground and see all this dust go up. I mean, it's twinkling. That's called Brownian motion. Those dust particles will never go to the ground unless somebody puts a fog in the air or somebody puts negative ions in the air. They'll just twinkle away like that, and that's what's happening with the virus. The virus is floating around in the air for the term of its viable life, which is its viable life is determined by the absolute humidity. So the lower the humidity, the longer its half-life, the longer it stays airborne. So that's where flu season comes from, right? Flu season is when the humidity drops, right? So the humidity drops, the virus stays viable longer. Up to 80 hours is its half-life, is what I've read in the science papers. So the droplet transmission and surface wiping and surface spraying, which people talk about, fogging, but it's not fogging, it's droplets. They're not making an aerosol, and nobody's, actually, cleaning the air that we breathe, but it's in the air that we breathe. That's why it has to have a vaccine. 62% of all vaccines are for aerosol transmission or airborne transmission viruses. Whooping cough, measles, chickenpox, mumps, influenza A, B, C, D, H times 18, N times 11. There's 800 different influenzas that we go, oh, it's just the flu. Man, the flu is not the flu. It's changing every year. But then they need vaccines because there's no other way known to man on how to actually control an airborne transmission disease. Polio is another one, right? Airborne transmission. Unable to control it. Put kids in school with whooping cough, put kids in school with mumps, put kids in school with measles, put kids in school with polio, and you've got yourself a pandemic. And that's why schools don't go back. Because they know what's going to happen.
Is it a good idea to be like wearing like a KN95 respirator as opposed to just a surgical mask? I mean, what are best practices to, keep other people safe and keep yourself safe too in that regard?
Okay, so the first thing is ventilation, right? Ventilation is our savior, but when winter comes, especially North America, like that's kind of scary. Ventilation at minus 20 degrees is not real fun, right? So, pardon me. So, the most important thing is a mask, and it's like in real terms, it should have that melt-blown plastic layer. So whether it's a general mask, like a 3-ply mask, or whether it's a surgical mask, which has got an antimicrobial treatment on it, which will actually kill what gets caught in it, or an N95 mask, which is it's got that in an N95 or a KN95. And that's basically able to filter down, what you're breathing in. And a KN95 takes out 95%, a surgical mask takes out 90%, but none of it takes out everything because the virus, when the virus is airborne, it's so small it could get through that, but our job is we all want to go binary on this. We want to say it works or it doesn't work, right? And that's not the right way to go, right? What we want to talk about is what contributes to it working, what makes us safer rather than safe. Yeah.
Best job.
So when you wear a mask, you're adding to the math, right? We're trying to get the R number down so that the number of people that contract, is controlled, as a slow, over years now, it's out of control in the States and Europe. right? So they've just got to try and slow it down so they don't overwhelm the health system, and then some people, they get the medicine right so that people don't die, and then they've got to get the medicines right so that people don't lose quality of life, with the post-COVID, symptoms, which are quite severe. So everybody should, you wear a mask to control what you're putting out in case you're infected. And if you wear an N95 mask, then you can control what you get in, right? But you should still be aware that nothing is 100%. So you're just contributing to your safety rather than being safe. If you can open windows, so we talk about residential cleaning, right? You can open windows. Okay, so if you go into a place and say, let's open the windows, that will contribute to the safety of that property, because if there's a breeze blowing through, you're going to refresh the air. Yeah, because it's cumulative. If you understand that, when the humidity is high, the half-life of coronavirus is 3 hours, and if the humidity is low, the half-life is up to 80 hours. So if a half-life was, so half-life is, if there's 1 million units, then when is there 500,000 units? That's the half-life. So think about this. The half-life of tobacco could be 30 minutes or 15 minutes. I didn't look it up, but the half-life of marijuana, like a day or 4 hours or something. The half-life of coffee, I think, is 3 hours. So you have a coffee, 3 hours later, half that caffeine is in you. 3 hours later, quarter of the caffeine is in you. Half of it 3 hours later. That's why people don't drink coffee after day or whatever. There's still caffeine in their system. So if the half-life of the virus was 1 hour, one person breathes out 1 million units. An hour later, there's 500,000 units. An hour later, there's 250,000 units. An hour later, there's 1/8 of a million units. But if that person was there for those 3 hours, right? The first hour they put in 1 million. After an hour, there's 500,000, but they've breathed another million. So now there's 1.5 million. Right. That's there for the next hour. So they've got 250,000 from the first hour, 500,000 from the second hour, and another million. Right. So now it's 1.75 million, and so the half-life is really important to understand what that cumulative viral load can be in a room and why we need to sanitize the room. Right. So that's what led me to develop an airborne sanitizer, because you've got to either ventilate the room, use UVC light, which is an oxidizer, or you can put negative ionizers, but they're kind of limited. They're kind of in real time, right? They don't float around and last and do work over a long period of time, but they're there. Ozone's another one. We use ozone in all of our factories for cleaning and killing stuff, but it's deadly to us, right? So you can't use a lot of ozone. There are safe levels of ozone. You go into a forest, you'll be smelling that really nice, warm, fresh. That's ozone. That's positive and negative ions in ozone, right? So limited doses of ozone feels good.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about that. This is maybe where there's an opportunity. When early on, I guess there was a lot of focus on sanitizing and disinfecting hard surfaces with, fomate transmission. It seems like, that's still a real possibility, but that's not where the real concern is. The real concern is the airborne. So what can we be doing? The ventilation and masks and stuff like that, but are there preventative measures, things that we can do to remove the viable virus, from the air?
Yes. So Mario just wrote something which I think is really, or Marlo, which is interesting, and that's the masks. So let me add how to test a mask, because we bought and sold masks for a short amount of time. We've got some in stock, but we don't promote them. But when there were no masks, we were flying them across with DHL to people who needed them in our customer base and stuff like that. So how to test a mask, right? If you get a 3-ply or a 4-ply mask, or a 5-ply, N95 is a 5-ply, KN95s are usually 4-ply, and surgical and general masks are 3-ply. So you get some scissors and you cut it open. The middle layer is the filter, right? And you get a lighter, like a light flame, and you light it. Yeah. So if it turns glistening silver, like beautiful glistening silver, it's the real deal. If it burns black, it's not the real deal. Okay, so while it's hot and melted, it's almost magical. It's like fairy dust, kind of sparkly. Right?
Okay.
But if it burns black, it's fake, right? Secondly, it's impervious to water. The surface tension of water is such that it won't go through the melt-blown plastic. Even though air can go through it, water won't. So you can have your mask and put water in it. If it drips, it's fake. It's doing nothing. And the other test, the water test and the burn test, those two are the two that anybody could do. And then the other one is just blow out light a match or a candle or a lighter or something and just blow out through a gaiter, through a cotton mask, and through a fabric, like a general mask or a surgical mask. You cannot blow a candle out through a mask, right? But if it's a cotton mask and one layer or something like that, you just blow a candle out. And if it's a gaiter, you can blow 5 candles out. You can blow a whole birthday cake out, So, and that tells you what your level of protection is, because you're trying to stop that, right? Your contribution wearing a gaiter is practically zero. It's virtue signaling. Look at me, I've got, and people don't do it because they know they're virtue signaling. They're doing it because they're being misled. Right, the people that sell them should be able to do the research. If you're a manufacturer of a product, you have I believe you got a responsibility to tell the truth. So they know what they're doing. But there's money in. I don't want to wear a mask, or I want to look cool with my mask. Yeah. So any mask with a melt blown center layer, general mask, 3-ply masks, surgical masks, and N95s and KN95s. That's all you're looking for is the melt blown layer in the middle. Even somebody can make a cotton mask and put that melt blown layer in between 2 cotton. You see that in Belgium. They've got a guy who's doing that. He's kind of making little replaceable inserts of the melt blown, so you don't have to buy a new mask all the time. Yeah, but it's that melt blown. It won't let water through, and when you light it and burn it, it glistens like fairy dust.
And what's the term for that?
That's the mask.
The term milk clone.
Melt MELT.
Okay.
Melt
Blown.
blown.
MELT BLOWN.
Melt blown. All right. So so basically what I'm hearing though, Perry, is all of these masks that we see that people are just making and just 3 layers of cotton, etc., that these are just they're not doing as good of a job, but it sounds like they're still making a contribution, just not as good of a contribution. Correct?
Yeah, I think that if you understand, the real reason you're wearing a mask is to stop the exhale, the distance that an exhale, it's still going to go in the air, right? Your breath has to go somewhere. If you wear a surgical mask, you feel the air come out here, or you see it go up here, and your glasses fog, or whatever.
Yeah.
Then that's if you're asymptomatic infected, you're still going to be putting that out in the air, but you're not going to be blasting it. That's the problem with going to church. People sing, and so when you sing, you're going your lower respiratory system, your upper respiratory system, and out there. So the viral load, and then you get like this, you talk about super spreaders. Some people have significantly more vapor come out of their bodies. Like my son, he can drink like I don't know, 3, 4, way over a gallon a day without he's not working manually, like way over a gallon a day, like and that's before we have a beer at night. I'm just talking about water. I don't need to drink a gallon a day. I never have. So but I'm imagining that when he exhales, he probably puts out more vapor. That's why we have a glass of water when we wake up. Like, we're meant to wake up, and the first thing you should do is have a glass of water, maybe a little bit of lemon in it, so it gets your Krebs cycle going or whatever. But we're meant to put in all that water that we breathed out overnight. Just replace it. First thing, put that back in. So there are people who put out way more vapor than other people. So those people become potentially super spreaders, because if that's virus loaded, right, then you're going to get that. Yeah.
Well, interesting. So the more drinks a lot of water.
I know right now. I'm
Maybe.
like, oh my gosh.
I know. See, diet. I don't know any link to this, but I know diabetics want to drink a lot of water. You know, it's one of the pre-signs that somebody may be diabetic. So that's why I said to my son, "You better go and get a test for diabetes, right? Because you drink way too much water." You know, but he doesn't have diabetes, but he drinks a lot of water. You know, and it's not like he's running off to like we work together, so it's not like he's running off to the toilet all the time. You know, it's not. You know, that's the thing. I mean, he's not like. Do you know what I mean?
It's kind
I
of personal.
can tell you about the thing about drinking water. So it's a health thing, right? They drink more water. Yeah. You should drink at least an ounce for every pound that you weigh. So, you know, I need to be drinking 135 ounces of water. That's a lot of water. But what I'll also tell you is when you drink more water, you want more water. So the more you're drinking, the more you want as you're like, that's why, like, I can't really be without water. If I don't see water in the room, I start feeling stressed out. Like, how will I last an hour? I've never been able to do one of these without water, ever.
I am the absolute opposite.
Yeah.
I do not need water. I mean, I may have shortened my life from that. You never know. But you've got to get your electrolytes right. You know, that's the other thing. You know, they learned that from the American football with Gatorade, yeah. And so you've got to get your electrolytes right, because you drink water and you don't have the salts, your cells won't take it up, so you're just going to pee it, but you've done nothing for your hydration, so you can still be dehydrated if you don't have your salts in balance. It's complex, yeah. But here's the thing. If we got down into that discussion about water and realize that COVID is at the same level, COVID gets inside a person's body. They get their post-COVID symptoms are diarrhea. It's in their gut. They lose their sense of taste and smell. It's in the olfactory nerve at the stem of their brain. It's in their neurological system. If you lose taste and smell, it's in your neurological system. If you have a cough, it's in your upper respiratory. If you have pneumonia, it's in your lungs. If you have blood clots, like they did a study last week of post-COVID asymptomatic through to hospitalized, and then they 2 months later, and 60%, more than it was like 62% of them had myocardia, had enlarged heart, which is typical of post-viral low white blood count symptoms. But these are people who are asymptomatic, have no symptoms, and are being basically, you know, maybe have got a permanent heart issue as a result of it, and they were just asymptomatic. Yeah, you can see daylight coming, right?
Yeah, that's awesome. Holy cow!
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
It get lighter and lighter.
And what city is that? What city are you in, Perry?
Shanghai.
Okay.
Shanghai.
Those are some tall buildings. And what'd you say? There are 9 buildings in your community?
This compound has nine buildings, and then it has security gates, and you know, you drive in with your card and it shows your number plate, and you know, it just everything is tracked.
Right, so you really can't leave your.
You could go to a main intersection. You'll count 16 cameras. Like, there's no crime here. You see girls walking home 2 a.m. You know, guys drunk, girls drunk, down alleyways, everything. You know, and it's just, there's so many cameras that there's just no crime, and you don't have rights, right? So you know, if you break the law, you go to jail, and you don't get to ring mum, and you don't get to ring a lawyer. You're just 14. If anybody disappears for 14 days, you know they did, you know, DUI or you know driving under the influence. I don't know, you guys call it something else sometimes, but so then it's not worth it to be a criminal, because you just disappear. Not disappear and dead. You just disappear for 14 days, and then if somebody has a a civil case, like even a company dispute or something, right? Then the court makes an order to pay. If you don't pay within 30 days, you or your company go into a public blacklist with a public video of a photo of you and your name and your like it's just you pay your bills or you're shamed, and then your code, then they can stop your digital currency, then they can it's everything which America fears, of the loss of rights and the loss of liberties. But it's smooth, and it could go south in a minute, no doubt. But it hasn't gone south right now, So anyway, somebody asked me this: Am I selling? Look, I can talk about Fog Blaster, because we developed it. It's an airborne sanitizer. You put it on a pole, and you can actually sanitize the air. You can use any disinfectant, but we recommend hypochlorous acid because it's the one which the body makes. So it's just made from salt and water, and we're developing a hypochlorous acid generator, a low cost one, so that people can actually make their own disinfectant. So I think that'll be an exciting development for residential cleaners, because you'll be able to make a disinfectant that you can wipe down surfaces. At 50 parts per million you can spray food. At 100 parts per million you can spray food and use a full wound care. Like if you get a septic wound and they flush it, you got a tube going in one side and a tube coming out the other side, and you've got some operation and it's gone bad, or a burst, whatever it was. They flush you with hypochlorous acid, right? And it's only made from salt and water. I love this stuff. I mean, I never knew about it before COVID, but I've just become such a fan of it. And quaternaries are the reason why we're all becoming, why all the bacteria are becoming inert. They're becoming resistant. Because everybody's using so much quaternary. But hypochlorous acid is what we make, and our white blood cells make it, and we're there. We're just making it, and it doesn't get resistant to hypochlorous acid, and it's only salt and water. It costs $180,000 to get EPA registration for a machine, like in 48 states. For a machine, did I go out? Oh, there we go.
But I met Perry a number of years ago at an ISSA convention somewhere, and he had his water poles, and we were talking about that, and hadn't talked to Perry in a long time, and he saw a Facebook post that we did with the hypochlorous equipment that we installed recently, and we started talking again, and that was kind of how we got to this point. But Perry, this is your website. Do you have the any of this equipment on your website?
This is all of our window cleaning one. So I just sent you in the private chat area the Fog Blaster one.
Okay. Very good.
And then I think you said, Perry, that you used to sell masks, but you don't sell them anymore, right?
Yeah, we've got I don't know, we've got like 30,000 in stock of the surgical masks, and we've got some N95s. Like they're just there because we sold, I don't know, 500,000 masks or something in about a 4 to 6 week period in March. We just said we're just gonna do it until America gets their supplies up, and then anyway, it all turned belly up anyway. But as far as exporting from China, but yeah, there you go, thefoglaster.com. It might need a www. Just check that. Oh, somebody's put it up there. Yeah, good.
Yeah, I just clicked on the link and I dropped it into chat as well.
Yeah.
Can you actually buy from this website?
Sure. Yeah, in the shop area you can buy, and then it'll be on Amazon. Like Fog Blaster will be on Amazon maybe tomorrow or the next day, as well as a retail pack. But this is really, the Fog Blaster website is there for service providers. The Pro Kit and a Double Blast, which is for large. That one you can see there, the bottom one. So this is kind of like a service provider's kit, and then the light kit, which is the one in the middle. A lot of what we believe that you want to be not just a service provider, but a solution provider. So the light service kit is really something that you could buy and sell from us. Like, so if somebody wants to, sort of open the door in their local community, let's say there's a beautician or a hotel or something like that, and then they wanted to be an agent for us, we believe that that's a more viable business model. So you can say, look, let me come in, I can demonstrate, I can provide the service. But the reality is, when you've got an airborne virus, is that you need a much more regular, structured sanitization protocol. You should be sanitizing like once an hour, once every 90 minutes. Nobody knows the real number. Anything you do makes a difference. Same as, and let's say nobody had it. Like, so I'll talk about fog blaster and no fog blaster, because I think I'll try and keep it balanced. If you didn't have a fog blaster and you didn't have UVC lights and you didn't have negative ionizers, you could open the windows once an hour, and hopefully there's a breeze blowing. So your intention is to reduce the cumulative viral load in a room, because each time a person breathes out, if they are infected, they're putting the virus in the air, and it's not going anywhere. Right? It's just unless you oxidize it or kill it, even though it's dead, you know what I mean? But unless you actually deal with it, it's not going anywhere. So you have to get it to go somewhere. So fog blaster is designed as an airborne sanitizer where you can take a disinfectant, which is basically chlorine based or a quaternary, but I don't like aerosolizing quaternaries because none of us know what's going to happen to you from that. But especially polyquads. I mean, polyquads multiplies that by 3 and 4, and then. But hypochlorous acid is the best one, and we promote a company called Nixel out of Missouri. You can buy Nixel from us, but you could buy it from Nixel. We're not attached to that. We're not part of their business or anything like that. We just know that it's a source. We have a friend in California who's bought the same machine, who's going to be able to have hypochlorous acid available for California, and we've got a friend over in North Carolina who's got hypochlorous acid, and we've got a friend somewhere else who's bought the hypochlorous acid generator from a company called Ecolux. So ECOLUX, they make hypochlorous acid generators, and we're going to make one sometime in the next. Oh yeah, Analia. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, these are the guys.
Yeah.
Marty Paris was a guest.
Yes.
Several weeks ago.
You introduced me to him too.
And he's in North Carolina. They make awesome equipment. This is what we installed in Castle Keepers a couple of weeks ago, and
exactly that.
It's a good group. Who's the one you work with out of Missouri? Mixall? M-I-X?
Yeah, N-I-X. N for Nancy. N for November. Nixall. Yeah, that one.
Okay.
So you can buy that from thefogblaster.com, or you could buy it directly from them. But that's hypochlorous acid. The problem with hypochlorous acid is that you want to use a high concentration hypochlorous acid with a fogger for a number of reasons, but the intention is to sanitize the air, and so Nixel makes one which is 500 parts per million, and they advertise it at 400 parts per million because basically it has a very short shelf life, somewhere between 30 and 90 days, but the EPA label requirements are 30 days. Now it is actually 90 days, but if you left it in the sunshine, right, it would be 30 days. So it's got a worst case scenario use by date on it, So if you're going to make a fog, you want to use the intention is in real time. You don't, the higher the concentration, the shorter the dwell time, or the faster the kill time. Yeah. So at 50 parts per million, it's 10 minutes. Now, even if you're wiping down surfaces, you're not going to leave them wet for 10 minutes. You'd have to wipe them every 3 minutes, depending on the humidity in the room, right? That's where humidity comes in again, right? Because it's going to evaporate off. So, let's talk about electrostatic.
We're at the top of the hour, but this is an important question. Can you help with this one?
Sure. An electrostatic foggers is probably the most misleading and deceptive marketing strategy ever. Because they tell you that you're going to put out an electrostatic fog and it's going to go around the object and it's going to stick to the other side and kill coronavirus on the other side. I mean, that's just total BS, right? There is a scientific principle, right? It's called draft, like how an airplane takes off. If you shoot a stream of air at something, it's going to have a high pressure zone in front of it and the low pressure zone behind it, and so the air is going to come around from draft into the low pressure zone, and you will get some contact. The Earth, like if you think, like when you put something to Earth, like anything electrical, you put it to Earth, Earth is neutral. Anything that's on the Earth is neutral, right? So the idea that you're going to have an electrostatic attraction to something that's neutral by charging a droplet, and then you have a look at the droplet size. So the charge that you're able to put onto a droplet.
Darn it.
Is okay. Oh, here I am. So if you have these droplets coming out of these sprays that are like this big, and you compare them to droplets coming out of a sprayer like out of a fogger like this big, the charge on a fog is much more, or on steam is much higher per droplet, much more possible, right? So you do want electrostatic sprayers, but the reason is so that when you have two negatively charged droplets in the air and they go to meet each other, if they're not charged the same, they'll join together and they'll agglutinate or cluster, and then they'll drop out of the air, right? Because they get heavier enough for gravity to get them. So you see somebody with a sprayer and you see it just go, like that. That's pointless. It's not doing anything. It's just everything's going to surface, right? So you do want electrostatic, and the fog blaster is electrostatic with the intention of keeping the tiny, tiny droplet nuclei that when they do meet each other in the air, they repel each other. The second one is the same as pesticides and insecticides. Why they use electrostatic is when it lands on the surface, this little droplet lands here, another little droplet randomly goes to land on top of it, and it repels it just a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right or a little bit to north or a little bit south. So it puts a perfect spread. Electrostatic droplets will spread, so you need less chemicals to achieve a coverage with electrostatic. It's got nothing to do with wraparound, and most of the sprayers, they cannot put a significant charge on the droplet anyway, right?
So the key is with a fogger, you have a much smaller particle. But from a micron size standpoint.
Here's a simple test. Put your sprayer in the room, turn it on for 2 minutes, walk back into the room, and is it full of fog? Or is your table soaking wet?
Yeah.
Table should be dry, room should be full of fog. That's a fogger, right? Table soaking wet, room clear, that's a sprayer.
Perry, I think you've made a lot of friends today, and you're already, they're asking for encores. So we'll, maybe need to check your schedule and see if you can come back and join us again here in a few weeks, because I think there's a lot more area that we can cover.
Sure, and it's all good data. It's all good information. Yeah.
Thank you.
It's all good data. Yeah. All right. Well, there you are. It's daylight now, right?
Totally day.
It is beautiful. Wow.
So we're on level 22.
Okay. Wow.
Sunrise.
Well, again, Perry, many thanks. And seriously, if maybe we can find a slot in your schedule here over the next few weeks, you can come back and join us again.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, sure. No, anytime. I mean, now's the time. Oh, what I was going to say is that if somebody, that's that principle of saying you can be a service provider or a solution provider. So if somebody, wants to provide a service, or they want to encapsulate, we talk about residential cleaning, and you could actually fog on your way into somebody's home and fog on your way out. We fog on your way in to protect yourself from them, and you fog on the way out to protect them from you. And then for businesses, you can buy and sell fog blaster. We're not, we're quite happy just dealing with anybody from, how to help that person be able to provide that service for themselves every hour in their school, in their convention center, in their beautician or their barber shop or their restaurant or whatever like that. That's the kind of the direction that we feel is viable for our contribution. also UVC, also ventilation, also negative ionizers, and all sorts of things. Okay, and wash your hands. Okay, but I'll be back.
That's you know, I think that's a good way to end it. Make sure you wash your hands frequently.
Yeah.
Again, Perry, thank you so much. We
Thank you
will
so much, Perry.
we'll be back tomorrow, 5 o'clock on the spot. You guys take care. Bye bye.